The rest of the story. They were the soft, strong, soiled hands of a gardener. Bare of gloves, they delved eagerly into the earth, and yet they caressed new blossoms with almost supernatural sensitivity. They seemed to possess a love for greenery all their own. The owner of those hands, the gardener himself, would continue to express that love through his labor until the end of his life. Watching him, one might have imagined that he had grown up in a garden taught by a gardener father until his knowledge had become second nature. In fact, he had been formally trained at the Institute of Botany of the National Academy of Sciences. He began that training not as a college student, but as a grown man, aged 55. Prior to that, he had only a little experience gardening as rehabilitative therapy when he was in prison, for this is the rest of the story. American poet Edgar Lee Masters once wrote, "Dudchin, I know all secrets, even the core. What seedlings were the upas sign or laurel? Asterisk, those were the secrets that mattered most to the gardener you had just met. Before he was a gardener, he was a prisoner. A man convinced that he would be unable to endure captivity. And yet, as high as were the crimes of which he was charged, his captors believed in him, believed he was basically a good man, a man who could be spiritually uplifted and reincorporated into society. One recreation for which he demonstrated an exceptional attitude was growing things, pottering in a prison garden. And so one winter day he was released from jail under the condition that he enroll in the Institute of Botany. And there he studied and worked extensively in the botanical gardens. He learned how to plant seeds and look after seedlings. He learned how to transplant them in hot houses. The Institute of Botany became a second home to him, and his colleagues became a second family. Overcoming his self-contempt was the hardest part of his rehabilitation, and yet somehow, through learning to care for flowers, he learned again to care for himself. He died in 1967 of kidney failure. He was only 62. He had been a gardener for less than 10 of those years, and yet if you had heard him tell it, those were the only happy years of his life. Despite the fact that prior to his incarceration as a war criminal, before he was put in prison for having caused the torture, degradation, and death of countless of his countrymen, prior to his term at age 55 in a Chinese prison, he was ruler of that nation. The man who spent his last years joyously, though virtually anonymously, the man who spent his last decade as a gardener certified by the Beijing Botanical Gardens was Puyi, the last emperor of China. He had been declared Emperor of China at the age of 3, and now you know the rest of the story.